Next time, I'll be getting back into a title that I really enjoyed playing when I first looked at it, but things have been getting kinda quiet and dicey on their end. Perhaps I should go check up on it. Alright, finally I can get started on Transformers Universe. God, I've been waiting for so long. Alright, let's see. Game's patched up. Action is running, but this thing is running really slow. Someone check server status right quick. Okay, y'all probably know what's going on here, but I'll make this quick for those of you who only watch my videos. Transformers Universe is gone. Well, it's still here, I wouldn't have gotten this fresh footage, but come January 31st, they're shutting it down and canceling the project. Despite the mixed attitudes on the game, I and a few others were actually really looking forward to playing this game, as well as being able to play it for the review. Now, I'm stuck looking for another game. Maybe one that'll be easy to do during the limited holiday time. Something I played before and enjoyed enough when I did. Something inexplicably marketed as a MOBA despite having very little to do with the genre. Oh, I got it. I know, another horror-themed zombie game, and this time around Christmas. Y'all know I don't do Christmas. I'm like that obnoxious, cynical person who's the whole reason they show horror movies on Christmas Day, to cater to those rebellious teens or anyone just disenfranchised with the holiday season. Working a near decade in retail will do that to you, trust me. Oh, yeah, the game. I looked at Dead Island Epidemic not too long ago as a side quest, but I'd never thought about doing it as a full episode until I was reminded it existed, and it fit those criteria. Dead Island Epidemic, playfully abbreviated as DIE, sounds on paper like something that would be completely awful. It's a Dead Island-themed, top-down, Diablo-like, random event-spawning PvE and PvP-based MOBA, except not really. While the developer loves to playfully refer to this game as the Zomba, the playstyle has very little to do with MOBAs, besides having numerous characters, each with 3 skills and an ultimate that you upgrade mid-match. The game is developed by Stunlock Studios, a Swedish developer under license from Dead Island's original developers, Deep Silver. So, yeah, MMO Grinder backup plan is a go, and hopefully this game has improved a lot since the last time I looked at it. Right? I've been saying something like this so often it's becoming a catchphrase, but the graphics in this game aren't really all that impressive. What we have here is another game using the pseudo-isometric view seen in most MOBAs, RTS, or Diablo clone games, featuring a camera zoom that's almost completely pointless, as zooming in does nothing more than limit your immediate field of vision, and make you more susceptible to sneak attacks. Trust me, even having your camera zoomed out all the way will not alleviate this problem. While the game's recent changes have limited its color palette to a rather dull range, if they manage to fix the issue I'll be getting into once I head into gameplay, this won't be a relevant critique. Let's just say that you should prepare yourself for a lot of orange-tinted ground. However, aesthetically, the game achieves what Dead Island was always going for in tone, and not what Dead Island's infamous trailer bait-and-switched everyone into thinking it was going to be. As Dead Island has always been intended to be a goofy zombie-killing game with RPG elements, Dead Island Epidemic is built upon that base, with goofy characters with equally goofy backstories, over-the-top impractical weaponry, and a very hit-and-miss tone of general humor. Characters like Berg are referred to as the Lumbermancer as an explanation for the fact that he can summon and toss logs at will. Isis is a young girl who's extremely adept at fighting because she played a lot of fighting games, giving her the ability to perform the Hurricane Kick from Street Fighter and other impractical martial arts. Newer characters like Haley gained their ice powers because the virus mutated her while she was in her ice cream truck's cooler. The weapons I spoke of are just as goofy. There's a fist weapon which is just work gloves with bamboo shoots taped to the end of them. There's a heavy weapon called Waka Roads, which is a road sign defaced and modified to look like an evil Pac-Man. Even the environments have various features like zombies and corpses whose last acts alive were sunbathing nude or photocopying their ass. To tie it all together, the game has a tone that its graphics portray well, but nothing about the game should be pushing the boundaries of your PC. I don't know what it is about Dead Island, but in contrast to the visuals, the music is always so much more somber. There's some pretty cool tracks invoking the game's island theme, but for the most part, the tone remains somewhat subdued and haunting. It's like the sound team and the graphics team were told they were working on entirely different games. Keeping that in mind, note the opening track, one of the only tracks I'm able to play, has this very desolate feeling of hopelessness that's really not the image to convey when you're running past a character like Roy, who's a stereotype of a fat American tourist wearing a Hawaiian shirt with a camera around his neck and a fanny pack over his massive stomach. It's always weird when a game's soundtrack tries to be deep and mysterious while the game itself is wearing its pants on its head and doing terrible celebrity impressions. And I mean that literally. When I was starting up, people kept going on about the in-game guide, Dr. Bauer, being very annoying. They claimed he spoke like he was being haughty and arrogant. You know, something like when I do this voice. But when I finally got in-game to hear it, I knew what they were doing right away. But it was completely cemented and unquestionable once I heard him speak this line.
You know, that place is actually great for fishing. And you know what they say, fishing's not that hard.
Give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Don't teach a man to fish and you feed yourself. He's a grown man. Fishing's not that hard.
Yeah, so not only is that reference completely missing the point of the original line, we've got a guy doing a bad Ron Swanson impression, whilst missing the entire point of what makes Ron Swanson Ron Swanson. Guy with mustache speaking in deep tones isn't the entirety of the character, and you can easily tell that they didn't get the idea. When you hear characters speak, you'll often hear a little bit of an accent slip out, especially the very distinct way the characters pronounce the word zombies as zombies. The rest is fine and follows the MOBA standard of having distinct sounds for skills, so once you learn the characters, you can know who is casting what from a distance and use that to your advantage. Before I start with anything, I'm gonna have to note something off the bat. If you watched my side quest about this game, you'll note I was pretty keen on the PvE mode, as I found it rather enjoyable and interesting. Well, it's gone now. Well, PvE isn't missing, but it's replaced with a completely different mode. I'll explain more about it in a few, but I'm not really happy with that change. When you start up, you'll be allowed to choose one of the starter characters: Berg, Bryce, Amber, and Isis. Berg is the tanky guy, Bryce is a ranged character with decent AoE ultimate, Amber's a healer type who's okay to start out with, but hardly the most effective of all the available healers, and my favorite of the starters, Isis, is a quick melee damager. Once you choose one character, you're stuck with that one until you unlock more. The tutorial reminds me of just how fantastic the game originally felt. It's well paced, not too hand-holding, and introduces you to the game's mechanics in a timely and intriguing manner. And then you do a few more stages where Ron Swannaby is giving orders and you start wanting to drive an ice pick into your ears. I guess turning down the volume also works here. From that point on, you'll have a couple more scripted missions before being let loose in the actual game. Controls aren't hard to grasp. It's like a Dota-style MOBA meets Diablo clone meets twin-stick shooter. You move your character with WASD. You have two weapons to wield, a melee weapon and a ranged weapon, switched at any time with C. You build up energy with the weapons as you attack with left click, and unleash that energy with right click, as long as you have at least one rage bar filled. Melee weapons consist of heavy, light, and fist. Heavy weapons are slow, but have a highly damaging area-clearing smash for their rage move. Light weapons are the middle ground with a spin attack to clear out hordes, and fist weapons are fast and short range, featuring a helpful dash to get out of bad situations or chase down enemies. Ranged weapons are pistols, shotguns, and rifles. Pistols being fast, light damage, rifles being slow, heavy damage, and shotguns meeting in the middle. Ranged weapon rage moves are more powerful shots with slight variations to their effects. Pistols can stun, shotguns explode an area when they're hit, and rifles will pierce all targets in a line. Finally, you have a set of 4 skills, 3 regular and an ultimate, like in most MOBAs, that you can upgrade as you gain match experience. Those default to Q, E, F, and R, but can be remapped to whatever you like. Despite, and likely due to the fact that you have so few characters when starting out, it's perfectly possible to have multiples of the same character in a PvE or PvP mode, so thankfully there should be no instances of people calling certain characters or quitting the match because they didn't get to play as their favorite. Before I go into how the new mode works, I want to talk for a small bit about the old PvE mode, simply and misleadingly titled Horde mode. In that mode, you worked your way from point A to point B, clearing events along the way, like capturing a point or defeating waves of enemies or busting down a barrier that's in your path. There were plenty of stages to try, and each stage culminated in a boss fight against a scaled-up version of one of the special enemies, and they were really fun and challenging fights. The Puller boss had to be tricked into grabbing various explosive barrels in the arena so that he could be stunned and damaged. The Screamer would douse the area in a toxic goo and let loose a scream that you needed to hide behind the barriers to survive. What we have now is similar-ish, but structured far differently, and I absolutely hate it. On paper, in many ways, this mode is a better reflection of and better training for the PvP mode. It's more open and free-feeling. There's more to do, and technically it's never the same experience twice, due to maps and events both being randomly generated. It more accurately resembles the PvP mode in that you don't have something so stage-like and limited, helping you prepare for the random event encounters of PvP. You start in the middle of a crossroad, hence the new mode's name, Crossroads. In this area you'll have a base surrounded by turrets, a supply offloading point, and Dr. Bauer with a World MMO traditional exclamation point above his head. Once you walk up to him, he'll automatically begin an event, where he'll mark a direction on your minimap, and you'll have to head toward it to find your objective. These objectives can be as simple as hunting down a few named zombie monsters, retrieving supplies from a crashed vehicle, capturing a point, or breaking into a barricaded room. Finish the event, get the supplies, return to the camp to drop them off, and repeat 4 times before the stage ends. You're also rewarded more greatly if you complete the objective to the correct standard, like collecting all the supplies from a truck or breaking open a barricaded room in time. So what's wrong with it? Despite the seemingly large number of missions, you'll find them repeating quite a bit. The crashed vehicle could be a crashed helicopter, a crashed truck, a crashed bus, but no matter what it is, you'll walk into a small spot, press X to gather the supplies, and leave when you get 250 or the timer runs out. Civilian rescue can either be a simple but occasionally frustrating escort where you lead a few NPCs back to your camp, or it can be the most painfully annoying mission of them all, where you have to break civilians out of cocoons that take entirely too much damage to open. All the while, no matter what mode you're playing, the game is spawning zombies on you endlessly. It's initially hard to figure out if you're supposed to kill the added zombies, focus on the task, or do both. For the most part, it's completely situational, but the problem is, it relies on the ever-fickle nature of the random number generator gods. You could have a fairly uneventful boss fight, or the game could toss several special zombies at you at once. You'll find the revive and bandage mechanic almost completely useless now, as it cannot be coincidence that every time I attempted to revive a downed ally or used a healing bandage, a spitter, puller, or ram would appear from off-screen and target me, despite the area being completely cleared out all of 1 second beforehand. The mode confuses difficulty with just throwing random amounts of crap at you at any given time. It's not hard, it's frustrating, and nothing would make me rage more than heading back to base with a good amount of supplies, only to be pulled back by an off-screen puller and then stun-locked by a butcher immediately after being released, and finished off by a nearby spitter when I finally thought I'd survived the onslaught. It's a serious pain in the ass and just feels cheap. It's also sad to see the once amazing boss NPCs nerfed into nothing more than slightly harder versions of the main special enemies. The Polar Boss is just obnoxious now, and the Screamer is a complete joke to fight, and the Ram throws in a crap ton of zombies and specials when you're attempting to fight him, making it a much more needlessly frustrating fight than it was before. Long story short, I don't really like it. I really hope they bring the old mode back, even as just an alternate option, and when I get into the community section, I'll explain another glaring flaw in the new mode. After each match, you'll be taken back to the lobby screen where you'll see what rewards you've earned. Collecting over 300 supplies earns you 1 star. You get 2 stars by collecting over 600, and anything over 900 will get you 3 stars and the best rewards available. You can earn a number of gear points, experience points, character points, and some blueprints and or mods for the game's crafting system. Weapon crafting is easy enough, but obtaining blueprints useful to you is kind of a crapshoot. In order to craft the weapon you have a blueprint for, head over to the workbench and choose an unmade weapon. You'll see the fee for crafting the item, as well as some required components like duct tape or patches. However, one major plus is that if you're short on the required items to make the weapon, you can simply opt to make it anyway, but at an increased cost to your gear points. During or after crafting, you can also place any mods that you've unlocked into the appropriate slot. Each mod grants you a passive perk that affects your character, not just that weapon. Things like the Scissors mod allows you to be stuck in the puller's grasp for 25% less time. The Wrecker mod will allow you to do more damage to a barricade, a very useful mod for getting to the center in PvP mode. Mods are limited by weapon type. Some mods will require certain weapon levels before you can use them. Mods will not stack with themselves, so someone can't equip 4 instances of the Scissors mod to render themselves immune to pullers, or equip a bunch of Wrecker mods to dismantle a barrier in seconds. After crafting the weapon, you'll have to make sure to equip it to each character you want to have the weapon. Luckily, all 6 weapon types are viable on all characters now, instead of the original closed beta method of having certain characters prefer a certain type of weapon. Finally, the addition of getting better weapons to take into combat might come across as sketchy for a lot of players, but rest assured that most everything in the game is behind a level wall only. You'll need to have your account level at a certain point to equip higher quality weapons, as well as unlock more perks for your characters, like gaining bonus skill augments, allowing more consumable slots, and of course, unlocking the gadget equipment slots, which didn't exist in closed beta and still don't exist, so I can't tell you how they work. I think I'll leave that PvP mode for the next category. Rest assured I'll have plenty of words for that, too, and no, I'm still not done talking about Crossroads. I'm just gonna come right out and say this. I don't think anyone fully understands how to play Crossroads. This is me putting it mildly. I'm not screaming about this as much as I was in-game. Grouping with people randomly is a serious roll of the dice, and when I was tossed into the first few mandatory PvE matches, we barely succeeded. Other players would travel all over the map, never grouping up with us or focusing on the objective, killing every zombie they saw and ultimately proclaiming that the game was too hard and then quitting the match. At least a few of my matches involved me having to head to the objective and attempt it on my own before the rest of the players on my team caught on to what was supposed to be happening. Players would often not share or split their supply loads, and would instead carry them to the point of overburdening themselves, then wonder why they couldn't get past the simplest horde of zombies. There have been times where I would drop some supplies for a player that was defending us during our collection, only to see another near-max capacity player snatch them up. If Crossroads is supposed to teach better teamwork for the PvP mode, it's not working. Crossroads isn't hard in the traditional sense. As I said, the mode's difficulty is based entirely on how much BS the random number generator gods are willing to throw at you. But those players coming from the old, easier-to-grasp horde mode might be completely confused by how Crossroads is presented. And while it might seem stupidly obvious to someone who's played a couple times, there are questions like, do I kill the zombies as I make my way to the objective? Do I focus on taking out the ad waves or focus on the objective? Do I fight my way back to the supply point or just keep running? And the game does such a poor job of providing suggestions and hints that the players are forced to learn through trial and error. You'd think that would be a good use for Non Swanson instead of just firing off stupid and disturbing quips about how he might have killed his ex-wife. Still, when you get a focused set of players, things quiet down, and generally people understand what they're supposed to do without having to resort to typing. While there's no conflict in character choice, there is the ever-present use of character roles that, while not nearly as important in PvE, is almost crucial to victory in PvP, and unfortunately, unless you're going in pre-made, you'll have no idea who's choosing what before the match starts. So making sure you have a good team cohesion of a tank, healer, damager, and controller is entirely up to the almighty random number generator. The PvP mode is called Scavenger, and is somewhat similar to Crossroads, but with more of an open freedom. When starting the match, 3 teams of players, green, blue, and orange, are placed at the start of a long pathway blocked by 1 or 2 barriers. The 3 teams race to the center area of the map to be the first to grab the supply points scattered around the map, as well as hunt down boss zombies for more supplies. Not only do you have to contend with enemy players, but the monsters will spawn just like in PvE mode as you travel around the map, every time you start a supply capture or try to face down a boss. Each team has a main base in the center map, protected by a turret and housing their supply truck. Killing zombies, bosses, and enemy players that are holding supplies will drop supplies for you to retrieve and bring back to your base. You can even attempt to steal supplies from an enemy truck, but it's a very risky maneuver, requiring you to destroy their guard turret first. Teams get bonuses for being first to the center, first to fill the truck, and of course ending the match with the max amount of supplies. The thing that bothers me is how samey this all feels now. Sure, the original mode wasn't as good as Crossroads for helping you into the PvP mechanics, but Horde mode changed the gameplay up to a different feel and strategy. Now it feels like I'm just doing the same thing in 2 different settings across both modes now. Kill this monster, collect the supplies. Find a crashed vehicle, collect the supplies. Capture a point, collect the supplies. Break a wall, supplies. Escort civilians, supplies. Supplies, 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 supplies. Supplies! There's something weird about the PvP community attitude. No, not in the way you're thinking. Well, probably at least. I've had some players mention to me that they were so bored by the mode they'd purposefully not support their teammates, but that's almost expected in this genre by now. What I'm talking about is an odd tendency to form de facto alliances against one team as a strategy. Our team has been bitched out by players from the lowest placed team for not going after the guys in first place, and instead trying to split focus by capturing clearly available points. They'd scream about how terrible we were at the game because we were killing them and not the team that, at the time, was not posing any immediate threat to our supply points. One time we were first out of the gate, and for the remainder of the match the enemy teams teamed up against us, even when we weren't in first place. You can only speak to your team or everyone, so openly communicating this plot isn't going to be all that strategic, but expecting people to just go along with it silently and agree with it seems foolish. This is the inherent problem with a 3-team PvP mode. Only one team is going to win, so teaming up against a team that's currently in first place doesn't mean anything if the other teams are just going to end up with someone in first place. I get the idea behind it, but what's that former winner going to do once you take that spot away from them? Hey bro, I know I was taking your supply points and killing your players and stole that boss kill from you about 3 minutes ago, but want to team up now that we're losing?
That's not how it works. That's not how any of this works.
Long story short, if you're not on our team, we're probably going to attack you. That's how we roll. Cohesive teams with varied character types can basically destroy you, as the game is very heavy on crowd control, and Stunlock Studios cannot be a coincidental name. Chances are, if you're in a group fight and your character is frozen in place for half a minute as the enemy team uses you as a supply pinata, you're probably better off just letting them go and hoping one of them strays from the pack. You'll be better off if you can form your groups with friends, but if your friends are limited by the characters they can choose, I suppose we should talk about how to alleviate that. Not entirely shocking to the MOBA staple is the fact that you can buy the rest of your characters in the cash shop. What is surprising is both the lack of cosmetic options and skins, as well as the lack of any free rotation for players who are limited by the current character pool. That character you chose in the beginning, you're stuck with them until you unlock or purchase someone else. There's 3 types of currency in this game, unlike the standard 2 seen in most free-to-play games. The paid currency is simply cash and is represented by a dollar bill icon. It still translates to points though, and if purchasing points from the US, they have an oddly specific purchase price, as the purchase amount is based on the euro and not the US dollar. I guess I know how y'all in Europe feel about that now, and I apologize. Second are gear points, represented by a bullet icon. These are your standard player-earned currency, but only used to purchase various blueprints and consumables available in the shop. As I mentioned, they mostly have to do with crafting, but remember that they can also be used for consumables, and the antibiotic is probably the most useful consumable now, since unlike bandages, you don't have to stand still and wait for the game to inevitably summon an off-screen puller to screw with you. Now, if you think gear points can be used in the same manner as IP from League of Legends or Favor from Smite, to unlock characters the player earned currency points, you'd be thinking clearly, but you'd be wrong. Instead, we must look at the third currency, character points, represented by a bloody handprint. While gear points are ridiculously easy to earn, granting you thousands for completing a match, character points will rarely reach anywhere near the 200 mark, and some character unlocks require over 10,000 points. I've been playing since closed beta, and only recently was able to earn enough points to unlock Mutated Isis, who runs for a bit over 6,000 character points. Speaking of, a good reason the game might not feature alternate character skins is because alternate versions of the characters are separate characters entirely. For example, Standard Bryce is your typical dude bro surfer who deals range damage skills with his paintball gun. Armored Bryce is decked out in knives and becomes a melee-focused character with defensive and control moves. Mutated Bryce is covered in veiny tendrils and becomes an AoE-focused character with more emphasis on debuffs and control. However, they've been adding more characters than just variations on the starters, but they still get grouped into the categories Standard, Armored, or Mutated. The game has even recently released the original Dead Island Sam B and Sean May, but at ridiculously high unlock prices, and new characters are locked behind a paywall for a week before they can be unlocked with character points, totaling as much as 17,000 for the Dead Island veteran characters. Stunlock, it's nice you're keeping new characters coming, but can y'all stop making new characters for a bit and actually, finish the game first? One note of worry is that some of the weapons in the cash shop are sold for cash points, and they're rather powerful. However, they are level locked, and some players have stated that blueprint versions of equivalent level weaponry are far better stat-wise. It's not as worrying as a matter as it would seem, but definitely something to keep an eye out for, and hope that Stunlock doesn't go too far with. Keep an eye out for the DLC packs on Steam as well, as they're a decent way to increase your character pool more quickly and gain alternate titles if you wish to spend money on this game. The DLC can be fairly pricey, but when individual characters can cost upwards of $20, DLC might be the better option altogether. I am a bit disappointed to be closing out the year like this. Yeah, the calendar is an arbitrary number, but something about starting this episode by witnessing a game I generally enjoyed get shut down, followed by playing a game that I used to enjoy before they removed the feature I loved, makes it all kind of a downer for me. I can't stress enough that Crossroads needs serious work. Axing a tweaked and thoroughly playtested mode to replace it with something that's still technically in an alpha was a terrible idea. They've alienated the players who played the game because of the previous mode, and have potentially forced away new players who see this broken test mode and hold the entire game to that standard. Still, the playstyle of the game feels fine, and the ideas can be clever. Let's just hope the studio wisens up and listens to the right community's feedback. Here's my final rating. I really like what they're going for with this playstyle. It takes the MOBA leveling system but adds some Diablo-style and twin-stick shooter elements that change up the way this kind of game plays, and offers you more character customization in choosing your weapon loadout, so you can vary your attacks beyond whatever your skills dictate that you can do. Fans of the Dead Island franchise should note that the game's style and humor is at the forefront, and with a recent addition to some Dead Island staple characters, there's even more to connect the game to the zombies in a tropical resort theme that the game's always been going for. Speaking of that humor, this game has it in spades, and despite the failure of basing an entire character around a Nick Offerman impersonation, it at least tried to do it, which should give you an idea of this game's tone. The weird weapons and the characters' goofy backstories all lend themselves to a lighthearted vibe. Being limited to one character to start is a bit of an investment in that character until you finally reach enough points to unlock someone else, so you may want to invest to get yourself a more respectable roster of choices. Keep in mind that DLC packs are a nice way to obtain a few more characters if you plan to go this route, but keep an eye on those prices. One thing always praised about MOBAs is the vast amount of choices that you have when selecting characters. Even the most stringent MOBA titles offer up at least a team's worth of player choices. Being forced to grind another character when Amber doesn't turn out the way you thought she would is a bit of a letdown. And if you did end up with a character you don't enjoy, why would you want to keep playing the game just to unlock another character that you'll potentially hate? The unlock system consists of 3 different types of points to gather plus a crafting system. Having your character's skills and full abilities held inexplicably behind a level wall doesn't make sense for this kind of PvP-focused game. New players might find it utterly confusing and even get trounced by the high-level players who are mechanically stronger than they are in every sense. This is one of those times where people get to accuse me of spending the majority of an episode harping on one issue, the new PvE mode in this case, but considering it's our only option for PvE now, it's a big issue for a lot of players, not just myself. I honestly understand what they're trying to do, and to be fair, the mode does have a concept that really works, but relying constantly on luck over skill, and hoping the game isn't going to sacrifice you to the random number gods, doesn't make it a mode that feels good to complete. It makes it a mode that feels like you only got a good score because you were lucky. While it certainly gels better with a PvP gameplay, many have found it hard to come back to this game anymore until at least the option to play the old mode is restored. Hey, y'all liked when I did that open beta tester event thing, right? Like, well, maybe not the game I chose, but the event itself was okay, wasn't it? Well, I'm kicking off the new year with another one. For those of you who missed the last one, the Open Beta Tester event is when I open up the Beta Tester level Patreon perk to all players who join the Grindstone community. This way you can read along or contribute to the scripts as I write them, and offer up your own thoughts and experiences that will likely be included in the episode. This time we'll be playing Trove, a game I've chosen for numerous reasons, the majority of which involve the fact that the game allows for so many players to play alongside each other at once. There's no worry about anyone looking to join us being locked out of content due to their level. You can even join multiple guilds in the game, so you don't have to leave a friend's guild for a chance to join us. More information can be found at mmogrinder.boards.net, and I hope to see you there. You know, one of those retail jobs I worked, my boss had actually died while he was in his office. And a customer was actually yelling at me, complaining that no one was helping him find things, while the paramedics took my boss's corpse and wheeled it between us on a stretcher out of the store. Happy holiday shopping season!